What's up everybody, and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the Audi RS3, particularly daily driving this car, drawbacks with it, and kind of how can you optimally drive the new 8Y RS3 for the day-to-day. Now, of course, this is a performance-focused car, setting Nürburgring lap time records and things like that, crazy 0 to 60 launch control, all that good stuff. However, 99% of people who are going to own this car, it's going to be a daily driver. They're to work and back car, maybe throw the kids in the back, a car used for the day-to-day point A to point B. Now, I know it's funny when people comment about cars like this. Yeah, it's kind of overkill for a daily, a basic Honda Civic is really all you need. However, enthusiasts, we love a performance car, and for me and my wife, we will literally never buy a basic car. These things are too much fun. With that said, you can't always please everybody. It's funny how when you have an opinion about a car like this, some people just can't fathom different opinions. And when I made the video, 5 things I hate about the RS3, that video basically goes over the 5 kind of drawbacks with this car. If you're looking to spend 60 to 70 grand on this, things you should know before buying it. That way you're gonna make a wise decision. One of my drawbacks was in comfort mode, this thing doesn't really tone down that much. It still drives pretty aggressive. A lot of people hated that opinion because it's a performance car, it should be aggressive. My thought is there's like a million drive modes. You would think one of them would relax the car enough. M3, GTR, so many other hyper performance cars in this can tone down more. So this car, it's a little quirky, a little bit interesting. So in today's video, we're gonna go over the drive modes, also talk about turbo lag. I get a lot of comments with people who own this car talking about the turbo lag the RS3s have and how you can drive it a little bit better. Because again, people who actually own the car will comment about it saying, I gotta pretty much rip on it to get the power, but when I'm just kind of going point A to point B, it's kind of annoying to have to rip on it all the time. So let's hop in and fire it up. One thing that I've noticed that is starting to bug me, every single time we start it up now, it asks us to select your user. And if I select my wife, who is the one on here since I don't have mine, and then fire up the car, it wants me to log in. I hate modern cars now because you always have to log into something. When I log in, it says system wait, and now it won't let me do anything. It stays here and I have to hit OK. And then whatever I logged into can't even start. So modern cars, I'm really annoyed with the modern crap these days, honestly. I like simplicity. So anyway, let's take a look at all the drive modes. So in this car, one thing I love, you have your RS icon right here. Go into that, and that will give you the RS individual. You tap it again, that goes into performance. Of course, you have your drive select down here, which will toggle the ones on the left side. So we're going to talk about all the different drive modes and how to optimally operate the 8Y Audi RS3 and kind of go over how to best drive this car for the daily, the simple driving when you want it to be conservative, and then the best ways to rip on it and enjoy it for a performance car. So let's first start off with talking about drive modes. Now in modern cars that have an adaptive suspension and a turbo engine especially, you have some awesome abilities to have drive modes in your car that significantly change how one car can respond. You can literally have multiple cars all wrapped into one by adjusting settings on the fly, which is the coolest thing ever. Now in this car, the default basically is comfort mode. So you're gonna have the suspension that's in its most comfortable, softest setting, the steering feel, which is also gonna be comfortable, the transmission will be in its least aggressive setting, and the engine will also be in its most relaxed tune. So that is a cool way to be able to drive this car comfortably. Now this car also has an auto setting. If you toggle down here and go into auto, personally, it makes no difference to me. I don't really know what the differences are in my day-to-day actually using this car. Those two drive modes, comfort and auto, they make no difference. So I just basically use comfort as the typical one. And then the next drive mode on the normal side is dynamic. Exhaust valve got louder, the transmission got a little more aggressive, steering's a little bit more tight as well, holding gears higher. Of course, you can put this into manual mode, shift with those paddle shifters. Now the other drive modes, when you toggle the RS icon, or if you go back into the drive mode here, you can manually tap it like that. But when you tap the one on the steering wheel, you have the individual, which this one is a customizable setting. So the RS torque splitter, you have comfortable, balanced, and sport. Drive mode, you have a balanced and a sport. Suspension, you have 3 of them. Steering wheel, you have 3. The engine sound, you have basically loud, automatic, quiet, and then traction control could be on or in sport. So that you can configure to make it drive the way you want it. this is how I have it set up for my wife. So I have the torque splitter in sport, drive mode in sport, which is what turns the exhaust to be loud. Suspension we have it in comfort, steering heavy, and then engine sound is also loud with traction on. So whenever my wife drives this car, she hops in immediately, presses that once, goes into RS individual. And that will start it up in S1. That is basically the sport transmission. For her, she doesn't like the paddle shifters. So in the S mode, this is automatic but aggressive. Notice how it's staying in third gear, it's holding higher gears. Sometimes when she doesn't want it to be aggressive, she'll just toggle this down into drive. So now we're in D4, but still in the individual mode. So we still have the loud exhaust, the stiffer steering, and the way we've set it up. But now, we're in 7th gear cruising, and it can be a less aggressive transmission since she's not really ever gonna take manual control of the shifters. So that's kind of my wife's sweet spot to drive this car since she doesn't want to use the manual mode, and you don't really want to be just cruising at 5,000 RPM in a straightaway in the S mode. Along with that, if we go into the performance mode, that puts everything into performance, the top level, everything's as stiff and focused as possible. You can still adjust this. We have sport everything. Traction control is in sport. This one, you cannot toggle this into the D. It stays into the S the whole time, but of course we can put it into manual. So in this mode, of course, that's kind of how I drive it when I want to have some fun, just because I like manual transmissions, I like having the paddle shifters, and that's kind of how I get the fun factor out of this car. For me, I either drive it this way or get out of here, go back into the comfort mode, and just leave it in automatic. So that's kind of how we drive it. Here are some of the drawbacks with it. There's a little bit of turbo lag in this engine. It just kind of is what it is. So if you're driving like normal, and a lot of owners have commented about this, daily driving, there's not really much power down low. I'm giving it half throttle. Started getting a little bit of power once we started getting to 3,000, but there's going to be a little bit of lag in this car. So what I've noticed is if you do want to instantly get some power out of it, the RS individual, notice how as soon as I clicked it, it's now in the S mode for transmission. All the sport stuff turned on to where the car is more aggressive. Notice how it's staying in 4th gear now because it is more aggressive versus going into the D. Now it's more conservative. But when you have it in the S mode, it will stay in a more optimal gear. Downshift automatically much quicker for you as well. So for me, that's a good way when I'm driving this in comfort mode. If I just want some power, I got a steep hill or something, quickly tap that, it instantly downshifts. And I have all the power at my disposal. With that said, when you are in normal comfort, you can also just toggle that down, and we're now in the S4 transmission once again, which will downshift and give you a little bit more optimal gears. So that truly is the only real way to eliminate the turbo lag, is just to have it in a more aggressive setting when you are going to do something. If not, I'm cruising now at 1500 RPM, 45 miles an hour in 6th gear in automatic, basic comfort mode. If I do need power, I gotta floor it. Not that bad. I had to wait for it to downshift a little bit, but then it started going. So it's not the worst. I would say, when I had the GTR, there was more lag in that, and that car you really had to make sure you were in manual mode or something. That car you couldn't just quickly, one touch of a button, instantly go into a performance setting. So talking back about the drive modes with what I talked about in an old video is the fact that when you're in comfort mode in this car and you do floor it, the car will stay in a low gear for quite a while. And a lot of people on that video absolutely hated that I had that observation with this car, because this is a RS car, it's a performance car. Why would you ever want it to drive normal? That's the thing though, when you have so many drive modes, so many customizable settings in an expensive car, wouldn't it be nice if every drive mode was very different from the next? To me, that is what separates really good tuning of a car versus they just threw in a sport mode to make it feel like it's doing something. It's really cool when you can have drive modes that significantly change the car. And if one of them is called comfort, and I have a dynamic, an RS individual, an RS torque rear, an RS performance, there are so many different drive modes in this car. Why wouldn't comfort just be relaxed? If I floor it, takes a second, but it'll stay in gear. Still staying in 3rd gear, finally going to 4th. It's a little aggressive for what it is. It'd be nice to just relax. My old R35, again, it's a better car than this. That car in the normal modes, it drives like a boring car until you change your modes and go back into race mode. BMW M3, much better car than this. Once again, more performance, and it can also tone down more. So the RS3 is in the middle to where it's got a heck of a lot of performance and it can relax, but its performance will never outshine a GTR or an M3, but also its comfortability won't go as low as those cars either. So that's just the one thing with this car. It is a very aggressive car when it comes down to it. Not many performance sedans truly have this level of performance and can't quite go all the way down. I don't really mind that much because when we drive it, we kind of drive it aggressively for the most part. We have fun with it. But this car is a little bit different than everything else. If you truly do want more of that relaxing drive, get a BMW M340 or a Lexus IS500. Great options. They relax a lot more than this car does. And if you want more performance than this, then you have to spend at least $90,000 to get into a GTR or an M3. So this car, you kind of can't have it both ways. You can't have the most comfortable car and you can't have the most aggressive car either, without either spending the big bucks or not having the performance that this car has, because this car is way more exciting than the M340 and the IS. So with all that said, those are kind of my observations with how the drive modes work in the 8Y RS3. Is it a good daily driver at the end of the day? To me, it is. In comfort mode, the suspension is very relaxed, and as long as you can just deal with it staying in a low gear for another 20 or 30 seconds than it normally would in a typical car, or pretty much every other performance car, honestly, it's perfectly fine. The steering's light, it's comfortable, it's quiet, even with the springs and a few bolt-ons on this car. It's a fine daily driver. When I drive this after driving the Lambo or honestly plenty of other cars, this is relaxing. It's so comfortable. I mean, it's a really, really nice car. So I like what it has to offer. And then you just got to play with the modes a little bit, be a little bit more conscious about your drive modes to get the power out of it when needed, because sometimes it's a little laggy. I wouldn't say it's the worst. It doesn't really have that much lag that bugs me. I just always tap RS and play with it really quickly and kind of just go back and forth. Anyways, I think that kind of wraps up this video going over the drive modes. Notice how we're still in a low gear. So it's an interesting car. It has a lot of aggression to it. So you kind of got to play with the car a little bit to really get the most out of it. And once you figure that out, and hopefully the tips I've said in this video, hopefully those help you out with how to drive these cars better. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for plenty more content. And I'll see you all in the next video.